Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Real inspiration for real innovators. If you're looking for innovation and leadership transformation, your journey starts now.
Welcome to the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Born. Look, I am so excited for this series that we're in. It's very different than anything we've ever done. So a couple years ago, I wrote a book, and believe it or not, it has been a hot minute since I've actually come on and talked about the book. And so I'm excited over the next 10 episodes. We're going to go chapter by chapter in my book, Set It on Fire, The Art of Innovation. And I'm so excited to have my behind the scenes partner with me today, Moriah. She's going to be joining me to spend some time focused on this book and kind of this project. And she is going to be interviewing me. So welcome, Moriah. It's so great to have you.
Thank you, Natalie. Hello, everyone. I am super excited to be here. I have loved reading Set It on Fire and just seeing how all the ideas of innovation really play out in real life. So I'm super excited to dive into these chapters and
Awesome. Well, yeah, like I said, it's been a couple years since I wrote this book. Here, I'll just hold it up here, Set It on Fire, The Art of Innovation. It's also here behind me. But I really wrote this book as like a field guide for people who are thinking about bringing innovation into their organization. And so, yeah, I'm so excited to dig in with you. And I love that we get to work together behind the scenes. And so excited to bring this project to life for the listeners.
Yes. So we're just going to dive straight into this. In your experience, you have worked with many different various organizations. What would you say are critical elements that make up a strong organizational foundation, and how do those elements specifically catalyze innovation?
Yeah, so I talk a lot about strong organizational foundations in the book because so many times when I'm talking to organizations, they're like, hey, we want to innovate. We want to just, we want to get our people to think outside the box. And I'm like, that's awesome. But we got to look at your foundation first. And just like, if you go out to build a house, the first thing you do is you look to see, is the foundation strong? Is it steady? And so for me, that is vision, mission, and values. And those are the three things that when those three things are set up well, we actually find that organizations can be really successful. When those three things are not clear, it's really hard for the organization to even know where to start or how to start. So that's really the first step, is I start with that question. And it's funny because sometimes I do get those blank stares of like, we don't really know what our vision, mission, and values are, or we wrote it on a document and it's collecting dust somewhere, and no one in the organization, including the senior leaders, can articulate that. So we always start there because that's the foundation for success, is what does our vision and mission and values say.
That's awesome. And I loved in chapter 1, you dug into all three of those with real life examples. And it was really cool to see how in real life, how that takes place and how vision and mission and the goals of the foundation really happen. So going into visions, you've helped numerous companies probably transform their vision statements. Can you share some examples of how a well-crafted vision has actually sparked innovative thinking and tangible results?
Yeah. So when I think about, people's vision firsthand, it can really change the way the organization thinks and operates. And it can expand what people even think is possible when they think about their role in the organization. It's really important. I can actually think about a time when I was overseas a lot for a company that I worked with a long time ago. And it was much earlier in my career, but a lot of times I couldn't pick up the phone and call anybody because we were in different time zones. And so I really used the understanding of our vision, mission, and values to make critical decisions about the business. And that's something that I think is a really important litmus test. Like, do people keep coming back to you because they don't know how to make the decision? Because one, you either haven't or won't empower them, or two, because they don't have a clear vision. So they don't really know where we're going from one day to the next. And Moriah, I've recently learned this word called incrementalism. And yeah, and I was like, what is that? But some people lead through incrementalism, which is like they only give people a really small piece of the puzzle. And they have the big picture, but they don't ever share it. They just give people really small pieces. And it's actually a way to control information. And it really is not helpful to employees. And so when we lead through incrementalism, where we're the only one that has the big picture and everyone else has these little small pieces, nobody really shows up as an owner. People just show up as renters. And so they actually don't take your vision and carry it, and they don't become someone who's like an agent of the organization who knows how to make really good decisions. And so what I realized with visions is when we can have organizations sit down and really put this together and codify who they are, what they want to be, it really shapes and changes the people and it empowers the people to move as one. When we don't have that, you have all these independent players who are just operating on their own. And so for me, I realized how important this was. And when we don't start there, it's really hard to talk about innovation or all these other things because we start hitting this lid, and it's because no one knows their true north for the organization. No one knows where they're going or how they're going to get there.
That's awesome. I love reading in your book because I think visions are hard for companies to do. And so in your book, the two things that you said was that it had to be clear and it had to be big. And I think that's super important, that those are two simple things. And you also say vision goes beyond circumstance. So it's not something we can really see tangible right now, but it gives the 5-10 year plan in the future. Like you said in the book, JFK talked about landing on the moon and how he wanted someone to land on the moon. Everyone got super excited because they were like, wait, this is huge. But then it goes into the mission of, okay, how are we going to get there? How are we going to get to that goal, that huge goal that everyone can rally around? So
yeah. Well, and I want to add to that, like, well-crafted visions don't just sit on the wall. They force different conversations in the organization. They force leaders to ask questions that they don't normally ask, and they ultimately create decision-making frameworks for teams, which I think is really, really cool. Like, that's what we want. We want people who are really bright, smarter than us, independent thinkers who are able to look at problems and solutions and solve them in different ways using the vision as the true north of where we're headed. And so, when this happens, I think innovation stops becoming like a special initiative that one department does, and it starts becoming just a natural way that the whole organization moves in order to make decisions.
That's good. Yeah, I love that. So after vision, then does come our mission, where is the more of the steps to accomplish that vision. So I'd love to hear your perspective on mission statements, because in today's fast-changing business world, how would you say that organizations can create a mission statement that lasts, but is also flexible enough to allow for innovation? And do you have any success stories that you can talk about?
Yeah, it's interesting. I may have a little bit of a different perspective on mission than maybe a lot of people do, because with the vision, I do feel like it's like that big thing like you talked about. It's like 15, 20 years out into the future. But with mission, I actually feel like you could change your mission every 3, 5, 10 years as you evolve. And the reason why is because a vision is this true north picture of where you want to take the company, but your mission actually explains what we do now. And that's really important. So if you want to read a mission, it should tell me this is what we do now as an organization. And so it's more current, whereas your vision is really big, lofty, and it's in the future. So I like potentially relooking at a mission every 3 to 5, even 10 years to say, is this still what we do now? And if not, let's change it. So as we accomplish a mission, we can build on another mission, all serving to get us towards the vision. And I think that's really cool. So it kind of creates this guide. And it's interesting. I worked with a company that had their mission centered entirely around a product that they manufactured. And so that was like their whole mission. And for years, it worked awesome. It was great. But then they hit this lid where they weren't growing anymore. And technology was changing. Customer expectation was changing. And ultimately, this mission kind of shaped them staying in this box. And so what we actually talked about was, how do we want to evolve the mission to solve more problems for the customer? So in order to do that, we had to go talk to their customers. Imagine that. Get out of your building, get out of your seat, get out of your nest, get out of your cube, go talk to the customer. And what was really amazing is they used to ask the question, how do we sell more products? And then they started asking the question, what are other solutions that could help our customers, where we could actually achieve better outcomes for them? And that's a different question than like, how do we manufacture this product? It's like, how do we achieve more solutions for our customer? So over the next couple of years, they actually reframed all their new product development around these new questions that they were asking customers. And they realized that they didn't have to pigeonhole themselves into that one product, but that they could offer a suite of products to this customer. And so not only did they begin to grow again, but they begin to innovate again because they were asking themselves better questions than how do we manufacture this product, right? Because they were all about focusing on efficiency, and efficiency is good, but nobody gets excited about efficiency alone, right? We get excited about expansion. We get excited about transformation, about building. And so it reinvigorated the team and the customers that were paying them to actually get really excited about the company again. So that's just one example with the mission, how it really does create guardrails. So we have to be careful that we don't box ourselves in with our mission. It should still be enough that we feel free to run with it and continue to innovate within it.
That's awesome. And you said previously, like, innovation does not have to be one team. It can be the collective team. And going to ask questions to people you wouldn't think to ask questions can really widen that box so that you can go and innovate even more and just grow. And like you said, missions can change often, which I think is also nice because it's not confining us to a box. And it's like, okay, if we work on this for a couple of years, we can change it, which allows growth. And I think that's really, really cool. I was going to say, you talk a lot about values in your book. How would you say that values can values change? Does that kind of go under the mission statement, under the vision statement? What would you kind of advise with that?
So this is I love this conversation around values because I kind of think about, when I think about vision, mission, and values together, I like to give people the scene of like a mountain. So imagine like standing at the top of the mountain is the vision, and the mission is the different things we're going to do to like get up that mountain. Your values are the guardrails. So they tell us things like you're not allowed to blow up the mountain. Like they give you like specific guardrails to say, yes, we want to get to the mountain, but not by blowing things up or not by doing something that would be, outside of the guardrails. And so values actually drive behaviors, they drive culture. And so I feel like when you think about the DNA of an organization, when you walk into someone's company, you can kind of feel that intrinsic value of the culture, which it becomes their values. And something I say in the book all the time is we should hire people by the values and we should fire them by the values. So if they're not living our values, it makes it really easy to have the conversation. Hey, we have these 5 values. You're violating 3 of these. Let's talk about that. Instead of this nebulous, like trying to tell people things that you're not grasping. I think the values just create that core structure. So typically I like for people to anchor to values that they feel like are very similar to vision, not going to change over time. So your values should not change every 5 to 10 years. I think that you want to anchor to values that feel like they're almost like the life of the company or the life of the vision. That's not to say that values can't change. I think they absolutely can. If a value is not serving us well, or it's not getting the behavior that we need out of the organization, then we need to change it. But my hope would be that we're working really hard on the front end to find the right values that drive the right behaviors. And so I feel like, again, like when we know what the values are and we're able to live them out, we don't have to have all these conversations with people about what they need to do and don't need to do. They're smart enough that if we'll put the values in their hands and explain them to them and tell them how to live the values out, people will self-select into your organization and they'll also self-select out. And so I love finding values that actually help people embody what the organization is all about. And I can look at someone's values and I can decide right there, am I excited about their vision? Am I excited about their mission? And are their values that I want to live? And if all of those questions are no, then I can self-select out and I don't have to waste someone's time and vice versa, right? Yeah. So I just love the fact that these create. And then once you create those values, you can really create guiding principles with them that say, hey, these are different ways you can live the values out within our organization. So these are the 3 things that when we like build that strong foundation, it's really much easier to innovate.
That's awesome. And then you'll be able to get up to the top of the mountain.
And you get up the top of the mountain without blowing it up. That's the key.
Exactly. Another question I have, one challenge I've observed is the tension between maintaining stability but also driving innovation. So how can leaders effectively balance these competing priorities while staying true to the organization's foundation?
Yeah, many organizations, let's talk about the word innovation, because even that word can be a little bit scary for some organizations. We
True.
actually are a little more comfortable with the word transformation. We're like, oh yeah, we're going through a transformation, but we don't necessarily want to say our organization is innovating. And the reason that is because a lot of times the core of the business is unstable. And so we don't want to feel like we're innovating, which feels a little frivolous. But if we say we're transforming, then we're even transforming that unstable foundation. So, let's think about this for a second, though. Innovation doesn't happen just simply because the leadership declares it a priority. We know this. We know that it happens when the environment actually is when we're able to challenge people's assumptions in an environment, when we're able to actually learn from our mistakes. And so really, when I look at, are you ready to innovate? I want to look at your culture. Like, I want to look at, what does it look like when people fail? What does it look like when someone makes a mistake? I once came into an organization and the person who brought me in asked me to run a lessons learned. So they had been through this big software project. And afterwards they said, will you run a lessons learned for us? And my question was really simple. I said, what would you do differently on this project? You personally, no one else in here, what would you do differently? The first person pipes up and they immediately blame someone else. And I said, hey, hold on. We're actually not doing that. We are looking at our own leadership and we're asking, what could we do differently? The next person pipes up, blames the other person. And all these people were just blaming each other. And so I had to stop the lessons learned. And I said, I think the issue is we actually don't have enough psychological safety here to learn what we could do differently. And I think everyone's afraid of getting in trouble. So instead of actually owning our own mistakes, we are pointing fingers at other people as a way to cover ourselves from getting in trouble. And we had to actually sit there and unpack that instead of doing the lessons learned example. And I find that fear of being fired or blamed, all of that shapes incredible behavior inside of an organization where innovation is almost impossible. And so when a project, for example, encounters a problem, instead of us raising it early and just working through it as a team, we hide it. And that's really scary. This team that I was working with, they had just had a major outage that cost them millions of dollars. Like, they literally were losing millions of dollars during this outage. And so what I realized was that root system in there of fear was actually costing them, their whole organization, millions and millions of dollars. Because instead of grabbing that mistake and saying, hey guys, I made a mistake, I need help, I need you guys to jump on this and help me, they were hiding their mistakes. And to me, like, when we talk about innovation, we have to talk about the temperature in the organization, the culture in the organization, which actually determines how successful people are able to be. And I just boil it all down to psychological safety, right? Like, psychological safety is, do I feel free to speak? Do I feel free to share my ideas, ask questions, acknowledge mistakes without fear of embarrassment, punishment, or even worse, retaliation or being fired? And if I can't answer that I feel psychologically safe, then that means I won't be accountable when I make a mistake, because it's easier to hide it than it is to actually learn from my mistake and improve it. So that's really the heart of what I dig up when I'm in organizations and help them put the pieces back together to create an organization that's psychologically safe so that you can innovate effectively.
That's awesome. And yeah, it goes back to psychologically safe, but also like a healthy team. If someone doesn't feel comfortable stepping up and questioning their leader just because maybe they have seen it work a different way or seen it work better, the safety of feeling like you can't question just to push someone even further into that innovation aspect of it is super important. So I think asking questions are great. And that really does show, is the team healthy? Can we handle questions and not blame, other people? And also a good point that you brought up in your example is that people kept blaming other people. We all have to realize we're not perfect. And I think we all go through a time where we think we are perfect and we think we can do everything correct and we have all the right moves and answers. But I mean, I remember specifically different meetings and stuff where I was quiet, but then the confidence that you have to gain in yourself to be able to ask the questions, to be able to be confident in your answer. Even if your answer might not be the right answer, you're still able to gain that confidence to, ask questions and have your own innovation to push the team to even have their own innovation. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And you can always do that when you feel safe, right? So that's like, to me, that's the key. Like, you'll only test that water if you feel the water is safe. If you feel like there's sharks in the water, you're immediately going to pull back and you're like, I'm not going to share this in here. I don't want to be made a fool. I don't want to feel like I'm asking a dumb question. Like, you literally just shut yourself down in those meetings where your point may have been the point everyone needed to hear.
Right.
But you didn't want to share it because you were afraid of what would other people say, or somebody going to tell me that's a really dumb point, which I've seen that happen in meetings, and that's really unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. It scares you for the future where you're like, wait, I know this is a good point, but I am not going through this again. That's good. We've talked about, the team and vision and mission, but as leaders, what kind of final piece of advice would you give to leaders looking to transform their different organizations?
So many things, but I'll narrow it down to this one thought, which is don't start with ideas, start with the environment. If you create the right environment for innovation, it will happen. So here's the thing. I've worked with a lot of, organizations, innovative organizations. They already have smart people. They already have capable people. They already have people that see opportunities for improvement and see places to innovate. That's not the issue. The challenge is not a lack of ideas. I've never walked into an organization and said, you guys need more ideas. I have walked in and said, this environment doesn't allow those ideas to surface, to be developed, or to turn into like real change that can be pushed through the entire organization. And so transformation truly begins when leaders can create conditions where innovation can actually happen. And so when we build the organization on those vision, mission, and values, and then when we align the leadership and the culture to those vision, missions, and values, what we actually see is the discipline to step out and try new things. And that's what I want for every organization. I want them to create a place where people don't feel like they have to hold their ideas close to the chest, where people do feel like they can show up and really bring their best self, share their ideas without fear of reprisal. One of the organizations I worked for a long time ago, and where I got this value, they had the value of candor. And I love this value because it basically said, we communicate with openness and honesty. So if something is, if we need to talk about something hard, we're just going to do it. We're not going to put emotion in it. I'm not going to put spirited nature behind it. We're just going to talk it through until we work it through to the other side. And it was such a value to me just to be able to say, hey, love your idea and enthusiasm. Can we sit down and actually break it down and talk about it? I have some places I'm concerned, but I may just be misunderstanding. Can we talk through this until we just get to the other side of it and it makes sense? And it really not only taught you how to bring the right spirit to the table when you're having a conversation with someone, but it taught you to stay unoffended in working through the solution, because you're not the problem. The problem's the problem. So we're going to stay focused on the problem and have the discipline to do that. What often happens in organizations is if someone dismisses our idea or doesn't jump on board with our idea, now they're the problem. And we've got to keep them out of all the meetings and make sure that they don't come to the thing, because then they're going to shoot more ideas down instead of teaching people how to disagree in a way that's effective so we can move forward. So culture is everything. And whether you know it or not, it is either making ideas flourish or it is stifling ideas. And so when we build a good culture and system that allows ideas to grow and evolve, ultimately we create value for the customer. And that's what we all want, right? We all went into business to create value for a customer. So that's the goal. And my hope is that as people think about their own culture, maybe they'll ask themselves how they're actually doing in this area.
If someone's listening to this podcast right now and they're like, okay, wait, I don't have a vision, I don't have good missions, I don't have values, all of these things, but I'm running an organization right now. What would you say is a first good, just practical step to kind of get back on board for having a vision and that mission and even implementing those values?
Yeah, I think pull your leadership team together and start to really scrutinize the vision, mission, and values. You can even do this. Walk around and ask people what the vision is of the company and don't let them use their computer to look it up. And if no one can articulate it, then that's where you start. And something really cool I started doing with companies is putting this like one sheet together for them where It has the vision, mission, values, and then it has the company's goals. And so then when you have your town hall meetings, you can ask people, hey, what's one of our values? And when they share it, they get a gift card. But what we want to do is enforce that everyone in the company actually knows our values, that they can stand up and tell us the values or tell us the vision or tell us the mission. But we only do that if you give it to them in a place where they can have it. And so whether that's mailing it out to everyone or having it printed out, really nice paper that they can put up somewhere, like that's where we want to start. Because when the vision is in front of them, they'll show up differently and they'll lead differently. And that's what we want in our culture.
Awesome. Well, before we wrap up, I know our listeners would just love to stay connected with you and continue learning. Can you share where they can find you and follow your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me at Innovation Meets Leadership on almost every platform. And then I'm Natalie Born on LinkedIn. And of course, I want you to head over to setitonfire.co and check out my book. I also have a study guide and a masterclass that goes along with this content. Awesome. Well, thank you, Moriah. Thank you, Moriah, for hosting me. This was really fun. I enjoyed just, getting to sit on the other end and answer questions. I'm always asking the questions. So thank you for joining me on this today. This was so fun.
Yes, of course. It was delightful to kind of dive into chapter 1, and I'm excited to hear about the rest of the book.
Well, awesome. Well, to our listeners, thank you for joining the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Remember, don't just get out of the box, break the box and set it on fire. Let's go transform something.
Thank you for joining us for the Innovation Meets Leadership podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our show on iTunes. Follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Innovation Meets Leadership, and visit our site at innovationmeetsleadership.com for more innovation resources.
Hey, my new book is out, Set It on Fire, The Art of Innovation. Click on the link to learn more. And don't just get out of the box, break the box and set it on fire. Let's go transform something.